We live in the most plentiful times known to mankind. जहां हमारे पूर्वजों को रोजी रोटी के लिए अपने वेकिंग आवर्स में टायरलेसली काम करना पड़ता था, वहीं हम एक क्लिक दूर है अपने नेक्स्ट जोमेटो ऑर्डर से। It might seem strange then to discover that today, even when the choices of brands couldn't be higher, the companies behind the food industry have never been so low. इसलिए आज हम उन्हीं कंपनी में से एक नेस्ले की तरफ देखेंगे। साल है 1886 का। Two entrepreneurs on the opposite side of Switzerland were getting ready to start their own companies. पहले है चार्ल्स पेज, a former US consul who had fallen in love with Switzerland's green meadows and fat cows. उसका सपना था एक condensed milk factory ओपन करना, hoping to mimic the success of first such factory in the world, built 10 years earlier by Gail Borden in the US. चार्ल्स ने अपने भाई जॉर्ज को उस फैक्ट्री में भेजा और बॉर्डन के मेथड सीखने को कहा, that how to evaporate water in milk and add sugar. Together the brothers founded the Anglo-Swiss Condensed Milk Company with the hope of becoming the British Empire's primary supplier of canned milk. At the same time, Page brothers से 100 मील दूर lived Henri Nestlé, a German immigrant जिसे भी dairy products का उतना ही passion था. As one of the 14 children in the Nestle family, Henry was painfully aware of the high infant mortality rate across Europe. To help solve the problem, Henry spent several years developing an affordable breast milk substitute by combining milk with grain and sugar. From 1867 onwards, Henry's Farine Lactée became indispensable to Swiss society. By 1871, his infant formula was sold throughout Western Europe, with his factory churning out over 1,000 cans every single day. Just 2 years later, Henry was selling over 2,000. In 1877, however, a new competitor rose up to challenge Nestle. When Henry was earning pennies selling his infant formula in Western Europe, the Page brothers had made a fortune selling their condensed milk across the world. They had become the primary supplier of the British Empire as they had originally intended. But by 1877, they had also spread to the US and continental Europe. Eager to expand their business, the Page brothers started selling their own infant formula. हेनरी के लिए ये वॉर था, तो उसने भी रिटेलिएशन में नेस्ले ब्रांडेड कंडेंस्ड मिल्क बेचना शुरू कर दिया, starting a relentless price war that would rage on for almost 30 years. Although both companies grew during this period, competition hurt their bottom line immensely. दोनों बहुत ही proud और अकड़ू बंदे थे and were unwilling to concede. But by 1905, when all three of them were dead, the directors of the two companies agreed to merger. The newly created company had a total of 20 factories, and over the next decade, Nestle would spread to every inhabited continent. Even World War I भी एक बहुत ही opportunistic event लगा Nestle को, since the world's military knew how valuable canned milk would be. लेकिन जल्दी ही they realized that they would have no way to service this new demand. Raw material shortages and international embargoes left Nestle's 20 factories empty. In response, Nestle started buying factories in the US, drastically expanding their production and cozying up to Uncle Sam. 1970 तक Nestle ने 20 से 40 फैक्ट्री ओपन कर ली, and by 1921 it had doubled again to 80. World War I ने एक लेसन तो सिखा दिया, don't keep your eggs in one basket. Throughout the 1930s, Nestle opened factories in Latin America and Asia, so that when the next war came around, they would be ready. Coincidentally, this decentralization kept Nestle safe from the Great Depression and allowed them to develop one of their most renowned products, Nescafé. Nescafé का आइडिया नेस्ले को ब्राजीलियन गवर्नमेंट से आया, which wanted Nestle to find a use for their immense coffee surplus. Brazilians ने कॉफी क्यूब्स बनाने के लिए कहा, but Nestle eventually decided to make a soluble powder instead. Nescafé hit the US shelves in 1938 with minimal advertising, and yet 1 year later it had become one of the most popular coffee products in the country. To Nestle, World War II felt like deja vu. At first, demand grew rapidly, but the sheer scale of global destruction left Nestle with huge supply shortages. Nestle's saving grace came in 1941 when the US formally entered the war. Nescafé became a staple of the armed forces, and government contracts propelled Nestle to record profits. World War II ended up being so profitable for Nestle that they immediately started buying up smaller European companies that weren't so lucky. Their best purchase came by far in 1947 when they acquired Maggi, the manufacturer of various soups and seasonings. 1 year later, Nestle unveiled two other brilliant products, Nestle and Nesquik, which quickly reached Nescafé levels of popularity. अगले कुछ दशकों में Nestle expanded mainly through acquisitions, entering various new markets from frozen food to pharmaceuticals. One of their most successful moves came in 1974 when they acquired a 30% stake in the French cosmetics firm L'Oréal. लेकिन नेस्ले की हिस्ट्री में कंट्रोवर्सीज भी बहुत थी। लॉरियल के एक्विजिशन के 3 साल बाद नेस्ले वाज फेस्ड विद देयर फर्स्ट मेजर कंट्रोवर्सी। यूएस एक्टिविस्ट accused Nestle of using predatory marketing tactics to promote their breastfeeding substitute in the developing world. The boycott quickly spread to Europe, and although Nestle eventually complied with the demands set forth by the World Health Organization, the boycott has been intermittently active to this day. Nestle 1990s तक expansion करता रहा, buying up brands like Friskies, Kit Kat and After Eight. During this time, they also created the Nespresso system. In 1992, Nestle decided to go all in mineral water, establishing what eventually became the world's largest bottled water company. Since there, their brand ownership has grown exponentially, but so too have their controversies. In 2002, Nestle demanded debt repayment from Ethiopia during one of the harshest famines in recent history, eventually backing down after 8,000 angry email complaints. In 2005, the CEO of Nestle claimed that people shouldn't have a right to water. देख रहे हो, भाई को पानी ओन करना है। मुझे बिलबर का जोक याद आता है।
You know, I mean, there's a guy from Nestle that doesn't think water is a human right. I mean, that guy should be hunted down and shot, right? And they're going to sit and just talking about all the, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, we gotta get America back to work.
It's like, dude, this guy wants to own the rain. Can we do something about this guy? He was at Nestle. You're supposed to be happy. He's making cocoa for people. And this guy's like going, well, people are running out of water. What if we owned all the water and we kept it under our place? And in the future, when everybody's, that's how you picture the guy talking. I want to own the water. Underneath my house. I'll come to the door in a robe, slightly ajar. Right? It's a complete animal.
This claim backfired so profusely that Nestle have a Q&A webpage dedicated to his apologies and backtracking. Last but not least is the cocoa industry, which is the bedrock of Nestle's chocolate products and is also coincidentally one of the global centers of child labor, slavery and human trafficking. Despite the numerous lawsuits and calls for boycott, however, Nestle has become bigger than ever, owning up to 2,000 brands across the world. Since people are unlikely to give up Nestle delicious goodies anytime soon, it's safe to say that Nestle will continue expanding in the future. If you like Nestle's story, feel free to subscribe. कर लो ना please, chocolate दूंगा.